Welcome back, guys. Today will be talking about lesson number 2. But before starting, I want to show you something. Every class video you are going to find under the headings Sesiones Online or Online Session. In this case, you will be finding class video lesson 1, which is the previous lesson we are will be talking about. So the passage in front of you, in this case this, therefore an invitation to write a general essay about the work from which it has been taken. We all know now commentary is an analysis of the given passage. So primarily its function and its characteristic it should examine the key themes and stylistic devices of the passage. Of course, is showing how the language works to convey or at times undermine its content. We all know a commentary should relate the passage to the rest of the work. This could be novel, collection of poems, etc. We were talking about this a lot in the previous lesson. So make sure your commentary covers the whole passage. For instance, if you're given a poem with 5 stanzas, you should try to say something about each stanza. Remember, if you have 5 stanzas, thus you have 5 commentaries. Remember to use line numbers in both poetry and prose. This is better than wasting time by quoting at length. But anyway, when you do a quote, make sure that your comments don't simply repeat what the quotation already says. For example, in the line "Il pleut dehors," the poet tells us that it is raining outside. Of course, you have to avoid verbosity or negative terminology, clarity and precision are its priorities. And polysyllabic words do not improve a commentary. Try to not using words like effective, atmospheric, or beautiful unless you're also explaining what the effect, atmosphere, or beauty of the passage are, because it's a passage, it's not a painting. This is a question that everybody I think you are going to ask. How should I write my commentary? So in previous video, I mean in lesson number 1, we have 3 parts. So I summarized again to understand better. There are no fixed rules for writing a commentary. The general structure will be suggested. In this case, you should always remember, plan your commentary before you start reading it. Follow these guidelines where appropriate. We have first introduction. This passage. Try to go into context and summarize its arguments briefly. Don't spend too much time discussing matters outside of the passage. Assume your reader has read the work from which the passage has been taken. Don't forget to point out the passage most important thematic and structural aspect in your introduction. Step number 2, overview. Introduce the main themes and structural aspect of the passage, like what kind of passage is it? In this question will be very helpful to do a structure of your commentary. For example, what kind of passage is it? You have to do a description, dialogue, free indirect speech. Next question is what is its function? In other words, in the rest of the work. Our question for the overview, what is its overall structure? For example, repetition, circular, morphism, delta climax. Next question will be what is the narrative point of view? First person, third person, omniscient or not. Omniscient is when the narrative person does not exist. And the last one were the registered high, low, and tone, comic, surreal of the passage. Remember, this is a summary from lesson number 1. If you want to know more details, remember to watch again the video. Something else, don't forget this question. You don't have to write this question. This question, they are just here for helping to know what you should do. Now, we go to detailed analysis. We'll be seeing here some aspect of the text that you should look for. For example, sentence structure, tense usage, word order. This means balance or lack. Therefore, harmony, repetition, problems, figurative language, characterization, narrative technique, point of view, punctuation, vocabulary, alliteration, answer rhyme. And finally, the conclusion. Don't forget to summarize your findings, drawing together the different aspects of text that discussed in your commentary. Assess briefly the achievements and significance of the passage, both in itself and in relation to the work.
So I looked at some of the assignments that have been handed in for our SEC paragraphs, and I think that we need to review again literary commentary and how to write it. One sentence is not enough. We have to use the techniques that we had gone over so that we have good literary commentary. Now, when we looked at the past student examples that they had submitted in previous AP tests, the one thing that we found was that the scores that were the highest was because students had good literary commentary. They didn't retell the plot, they explained how the author was using a specific literary device to develop the ideas, the themes of the story. And I'm going to say it again, one sentence is not enough. And I'm going to repeat it. One sentence is not enough. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back and review what we had gone over this year. Because good commentary equals a 9. Bad commentary, good luck. All right, now, the first thing that we have to have either written down, since it's open note, open book, it's pretty easy. You have to know the definition and the function of the literary device employed by the author. This is how you make the comment, by knowing the definition and the function and using the technique who, what, where, when, why, and how. It's the answer to these questions that you're going to create multiple sentences of commentary. Remember, commentary is you making an inference on what the author is trying to convey through the use of this particular device. Multiple sentences. One sentence is not enough. So let's look at an example. An author uses imagery. What is the definition of imagery? Imagery means to use figurative language to represent objects, actions, and ideas in such a way that it appeals to our physical senses. The function of imagery in literature is to generate a vibrant and graphic presentation of a scene that appeals to as many of the reader's senses as possible. It aids the reader's imagination to envision the characters and scenes in the literary piece clearly. Apart from the above-mentioned function, images drawn by using figures of speech like metaphor, simile, personification, and onomatopoeia serve the function of beautifying a piece of literature. This definition and function comes from literarydevices.net. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to use the ideas in the definition and function of the imagery to create multiple sentence commentaries or sentences of commentary. We're going to take these ideas and words and create plug and play sentences that we can incorporate when we write about any type of literature. Now, after reading the definition and function of imagery, what I want to ask myself is, what are the key words and phrases in the definition and function that we can use to create good commentary? So I want to identify the nouns, the verbs, and the adjectives. And we're going to use these words to generate our templates for the term that can be applied to any example of imagery that we're going to use. Now, what I want you to do is stop the video now, roll it back, go to the definition and function, and freeze it. And on your own, I want you to try to create template sentences with the words and ideas. When you have accomplished this task, start the video back up where we're at right now and look at the examples that I have put together. Okay, now hopefully you didn't just blow right through and you actually did the exercise and created your sentence templates. It's important to practice these ideas. These are my sentence templates. So what I did was I went through the definition and function and I wrote these sentences that I could plug and play in my commentary, no matter what the piece is, as long as it's dealing with imagery. These are the words and ideas I want to use. First, the figurative language presented in the quote represents blank in a way that appeals to the sense of blank. Now, a tree could represent life, dust represent time, a fork in the road could represent choices. And what physical sense does this image appeal to? Because what the author's trying to do is to take his theme that he's presenting, which is unfamiliar, and associate it with the reader in something that they are familiar with. And this is done through imagery. For instance, we had read Robert Frost's The Road Not Taken. So we have a fork in the road, and I could plug this sentence in like this. This is kind of rough, so I'm just doing it on the fly. The figurative language presented in the above quote represents choices in a way that appeals to the sense of a visual sense. Okay, so he's in the poem, I'm sitting there and I can visually see this fork in the road, which represents choices. So it allows me, the reader, to associate the theme that Frost is trying to develop with something I'm already familiar with. Next, generates a vibrant and graphic presentation of something that appeals to the sense of something. So here we have, let's say, presentation of life, death, hope, loss, and a reader can associate the complex ideas to the physical sense. So I could say, talking about Frost again, generates a vibrant and graphic presentation of choices that appeals to the visual sense of the reader, and then I will explain, make a difference why. Next, aids in the imagination to envisioning something clearly. So again, we're relating a complex theme to something familiar. Lastly, a figurative language, blank, serves the function of beautifying or not beautifying, blank, by appealing to the familiar sense of blank. So what the author's trying to do with imagery is relate complex ideas, the theme, to the reader by associating the idea that's familiar with them. And that's the purpose of imagery. Now I have these sentence templates, not exact. I'm going to adjust them as I go, but it helps me get a start. So if I'm dealing with imagery, this is what I want to have in front of me when I'm taking the test in my notes so that I can plug and play. Okay, now let's take a look at an example. And here we have a quote from Charles Dickens' Great Expectations, where Pip, the hero of the novel, uses many images to describe a damp morning in the marsh. Now, the purpose that Dickens is trying to accomplish is to allow the reader to associate through the images he creates with the theme that he's developing, so that something that's not familiar can be associated with something you are familiar with and give you an understanding. So, it was a rimy morning and very damp. I had seen the damp lying on the outside of my little window. Now I saw the damp lying on the bare hedges and spare grass. On every rail and gate, wet lay clammy. And the marsh mist was so thick that the wooden finger on the post directing people to our village, a direction which they never accepted, for they never came, was invisible to me until I was quite close under it. All right. So the repeated words of damp and wet make us feel how miserable it was for him. The damp and cold morning, the thick marsh mist aids our imagination to visualize the scene of the morning in the marshland. So what words and phrases are repeated? So as this is how I'm going to do it. I have to do these exercises, then I put them in my plug and play sentences. So what words and phrases are repeated that have similar ideas? Well, we have rimy, very damp, damp, lying, bare hedges, spare grass, wet, clammy, marsh mist, thick, wooden finger, never accepted, never came, invisible to me. So as I'm starting to think about writing the commentary, I already have my plug and play sentence frames that I'm going to use. I want to identify the words and phrases within the text that appeal to my senses. Next, I want to say, well, to what senses do these words appeal? So I want to focus on the verbs. I saw, lay clammy, mist was thick, never accepted, never came, invisible. So these are words that create an image in my mind that help me understand what the author's trying to say. So this is visual and tactile. So I see it and I can feel it. You go out in the morning, you can just feel the wet, clammy all over you. Next, I want to think about the tone of the words. What emotions or mood do they create? So we look at the tone and the mood. So I want you to look at the tone and mood handout that I gave you, and it'll give you the words and phrases. This is the tone of the words the author uses to create the mood that the reader feels. So I looked at it and I said, well, gloomy, barren, inhospitable, neglected, forsaken, defeated, hopeless. So these are the words. They're not in the text, right? Because we're making an inference. That's what commentary is. These are the words that describe the words the author uses and how I feel as I read them, because I'm making an inference. One sentence doesn't do it. More than one sentence. Let's look at the example. All right, now I'm going to write some commentary on the previous example, Charles Dickens. Now remember, you're not going to retell the story. That's why we're using this chart: who, what, where, when, why, and how. What this allows me to do is generate answers to questions that I can use in my commentary. Commentary is always about the author, what the author is doing with the particular literary device. Let's look at an example. So who am I talking about? Charles Dickens. If it's not about Charles Dickens in your commentary, it's wrong. What is he doing? Well, he's developing the mood through imagery. Remember, he has the imagery, the words that he uses have a tone that create a mood for me, the reader. Where is he doing it? Great Expectations. When is he doing it? Well, when Pip, the hero of the novel, describes the morning. Why is he doing it? To convey a theme of gloom and hopelessness. That's what I figured he's doing, gloom and hopelessness with this. How is he doing it? The words and phrases that appeal to the senses of the reader so that it can associate with the familiar with the unfamiliar. Now, I'm taking these ideas and I'm keeping in mind my templates that I made for imagery, the definition and function. I'm going to write more than one sentence. One sentence is not good enough. Let's take a look at my first one. In the above quote, Dickens utilizes figurative language that represents gloom and birds going overhead. What are you going to do? In the above quote, Dickens utilizes figurative language that represents gloom and hopelessness in a way that appeals to the visual and tactile senses. So that comes from my template, the sentences that I made. All I did was just change it a little bit and put in the ideas that Dickens is using in that particular quote. Next. The tone he uses generates this mood and allows the reader to internalize the scene by associating the known with the theme he is creating. I'm just using the definition and function. I'm taking the answers to my questions, and now I have two sentences. Oh, a third sentence, because look at the example here. The imagery created by the words rimy, damp, bare, spare, and clammy aids the imagination of the reader to clearly envision a gloomy, barren, neglected, and forsaken scene. That comes from the definition. All I did was plugged in the words and ideas that Dickens was creating. Now, lastly, I thought about, well, that finger, that was pretty good. The figurative language describing the post serves the function of creating a death-like atmosphere by appealing to the sense of fear. All right, so there's my commentary. I didn't paraphrase anything that was in the quote itself. All I did was I used my template sentences about imagery, and I wrote an inference of what I believe Dickens was doing. That's commentary. By using my techniques, who, what, where, when, why, and how, by taking the words and phrases that are in the definition and function and making plug and play templates, I have good commentary. That's a 9. One sentence is not enough. Don't be lazy. We already went over this technique. It's easy if you take your time, and you'll get an A. Let me emphasize again, one sentence is not commentary. I've given you all the techniques to use to create good commentary. We take the definition and the function from literarydevices.net, and I'm going to have many more videos on all the literary devices I think we're going to need for this test, and create templates by using the definition and function. We can take these templates and generate plug and play frameworks that we can use on anything that we read about. Then, by using the who, what, where, when, why, and how technique, we can generate multiple sentences of commentary. The focus of the commentary should explain how and why the author uses a particular literary device. Don't retell the story. Commentary is about the author, the literary device, and the effect that the device has upon the reader. That's the mood, tone, mood, imagery. Right here, this is what we're writing about. It's got to be an inference of the author's purpose. Don't write one sentence commentary.
Response to an issue, not a spur for the moment reaction. Offers your thought on a text, not a summary of a text. Is based on reason and intelligence, not a feeling oriented. I liked or didn't like it because. Especially this. Most people think commentary has relationship with liking, but it's not the case. Next, find faults with and or phrases a text and not simply agreeing or disagreeing with the provided explanation text and leaving it out. Remember what we were watching in the video before with the teacher explaining how can you create templates. Don't forget about it. Next one, may contain personal knowledge, cannot contain personal experience. So this is very explicit. When we are writing our commentary, we can present our own idea in our own words. But don't simply summarize the text. Speaking about summarizing, we will be talking about, of course, the difference with in a summary with a commentary. So don't worry about it. Let's continue. Your commentary is exactly that. That only tells what the author said. Your comment and thought, not what you think. Then provide a context for your readers by giving a don't assume that your readers knows the very summary of the text issue or your issue in the background information commented on. In this case, provide readers with enough, include title, author, and main idea information, or your commentary will be there. Then give the author credit for her ideas, his or her ideas to make sense to them using proper citation. Next one, summarize only those parts of the text you're commenting on. Of course, make sure you understand the text issue. You don't just try to get assignment done by commenting on winning it. You can intelligently respond to writer's idea if you do not follow the author message. Ask for help if you don't understand. Otherwise, you understand what they are. Won't be able to comment on the author's content. This is very important, this part. This is my favorite. Be thorough yet selective. Don't be vague. Please. Provide full explanation that use appropriate supporting details and explore and explain all the angles of the issue you are commenting on. Following this, will we focus on the don't. Commentary should not be a précis, that is a summary or description, of the article. Summary and description are not commentary. We should get this. It is generally preferable not to proceed line by line through the passage from beginning to end. Instead, one should identify important themes or elements and then discuss each of those in turn, illustrating with examples from the passage. To not reference other pieces of writing, whether they be your own or by somebody else. It is possible to write a successful commentary on a piece of writing you have only just read because commentary is meant to be an exercise analysis of the given passage. Any comments that do consider the wider context should remain secondary. They must emerge directly from analysis of the passage of element in some way. So pay close attention to or identify the use of language, for example, syntax, the word order, grammatical feature, word choice, lexical field, rhetorical devices. But remember, there is no point in simply describing such feature if you don't explain how or why they're important or meaningful. Remember the previous video. You can also in a draft write who, where, how. Don't forget about that. Voice perspective and point of view. For example, the relation between the voice of the text and the reader audience. Assumption are implicitly or explicitly made by the text or attributed to the reader. Try to understand tells what this tells you about the writer or what the writer assumes about the reader. Bias in the text that is presented who does get a voice. Words that make the writer's attitude and beliefs clear. With a voice and perspective is missing, etc. Ambiguities or inconsistencies and suggest possible alternatives reading, particular themes and elements of the passage. Don't try to write about every feature of the text. And now we have again some tips for writing a commentary, identifying and annotating major feature on languages that stand out in your text. For example, the changing tone of the text, the use of bias, the use of pathos, the use of personal address, etc. Then create a list of the areas that you can provide the most varied details and examples for. Following this, I will I wanted to show you some strategies you can use to writing commentary and of course the difference between a commentary and a summary. Let me show you some strategies. Here we are. Differences between summary and commentary. Remember, summary is a brief account given the main points of something. Commentary is a series of explanation and interpretation. Summary is surface. Commentary is deep. Summary is regurgitation. Commentary is original. Regurgitation is like made in a copy, for example. The multifaceted natural commentary. There is only one way to provide a summary. You read or view a work and then write down a recap of what the work is all about. However, there are many ways to provide commentary, including your opinion. Remember, is a perspective, a judgment, a place of work is not experience. Don't forget about it. Then, interpretation, your explanation of an element of the work that is not immediately obvious. Insight, your discussion of the inner nature of work. Personal reaction, your personal emotion about the work. Evaluation, your examination judgment of the value of a work. In this case, I chose my favorite movie and my favorite book, The Godfather, to show you an example. This is example of the summary, something you would read in a movie description on the back of a book. The Godfather Part 2. The early life and career of Vito Corleone in 1920. New York is portrayed while his son Michael spent a time in his grip on his crime syndicate stretching from Lake Tahoe, Nevada, to Revolution 1958 in Cuba. This is a brief summary. Commentary, something you will read in a film or book review. For example, this is an extract from Rolling Tomato. It's a film page for critics. Let's read a commentary drawing on strong performances by Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. Francis Ford Coppola's continuation Mario Puzo's Mafia saga set new standard for sequels that have yet to be matched or broken. So you can see the difference. We have rules to consider: avoid subjective phrases, even when giving commentary in the form of an opinion. Avoid using subjective phrases like I hope, I believe, and I think. Try to do this in a impersonal. Don't use first person, second person, or third person. These are just throwaway phrases. They are redundant. You wrote the essay, so it's obvious you think, believe, or hope that is written, and they reduce your credibility. Maintain a 2-1 ratio of commentary to summary. In general, you should provide approximately 2 points of commentary for every specific detail you offer. While summary is still important for giving your reader context, commentary is critical to reading a sophisticated essay. Follow the prompt direction. Sometimes the prompt will state for you to only offer opinion. Other times you're expected to only offer insight of the interpretation. And other times you have more freedom as to what type of commentary you can include in your essay. It will be according to what your work requires. The important idea to remember is to follow the prompt direction for the assignment. And here we are, some final tips. Your commentary should not merely repeat or reword your evidence, topic, sentence, or thesis. You should always include more commentary than summary or evidence. Commentary should follow evidence. No paragraph should end with a quote, but rather insightful commentary. So, to end this lesson, we have some activities. In this case, for lesson 2, please answer this question. Number 1. How can I ensure that my commentary is based on a reasoned intelligence rather than just personal feelings? To answer this question, don't forget to read the do and don'ts file, okay? And the commentary strategies file. Both will be in our resources materials in our Classroom Virtual. Number two, what are some keys, do's and don'ts to keep in mind when writing a commentary? Number three, why is it important to provide context for readers in commentary? And how can I feel it to do so? Number four, what are the main differences between summary and commentary? This is a very, very important question. Number five, what are some strategies for providing effective commentary? And number six, what is important to avoid subjective phrases when writing commentary? So please answer this question in the forum lesson number two.